profoundly grateful for everything that I've had the chance to do, that it almost feels like ingratitude to expect more, or to not be content with what I've been given already. Very grateful for any opportunities that come. I would love for them to come, but I'm not going to lose any sleep, because I just gotta get that next big thing, you know? I feel like I've already been given a lot more than I deserved, you know? So try to just be content. Yes, sir.
So, obviously, like you said, you've been in the industry for, well, decades now. In reading through your profile, you've done writing and directing and composing and all of those, and obviously acting is what you're known for. Are any of those other roles that you've done something that you feel like you'd like to do more of, directing, writing, stuff?
Well, as a matter of fact, I did a little directing for Funimation, and I've been talking with them about doing more. We've talked about with their broadcast dubs and the things that they're doing now, they're getting a lot of material out very quickly, and that necessitates a lot of people working at the same time and a very busy schedule. And the last time I was up there, I spoke with them about being interested in possibly directing for their broadcast dubs. So that's something that may pan out. I love music. I've been writing and producing music, singing, playing, producing, arranging, recording twice as long as I've been voice acting. Been voice acting about 18 years, I think. And twice that long I've been writing and producing music. I had it in my mind I've got 6 original CDs on iTunes available at the conventions. A lot of them have anime-related themes that I've sung or written. And a few years ago, I had it in my mind that I was going to do another CD, another record. And then at the same time, I came up with this idea for a web series called Star Trek Continues. And that took over, and that has become the absolute overwhelming, all-encompassing responsibility in my life for the last 5 years. Once that's done, I want to go back and record that record that I wanted to do years ago. But those are the main things. Maybe a chance, maybe doing some more directing and music.
Speaking of music, who are some of your favorite artists, either historical or modern or anywhere in between?
Well, I may hear some laughs from you, but I grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And I love the music of the 80s. I'm especially fond of singer-songwriters, people that wrote their own music and sang it. To me, I hope this doesn't get me in trouble, but to me, singers are a dime a dozen. Like, everybody sings, you know what I mean? And with today's technology, you can make anybody sound good in a recording studio. To me, what's special is writing songs, and not only writing them, but being able to sing them. There are songwriters that are not great singers, and that's awesome. And there are singers that are not songwriters, and that's awesome. But somebody who's able to create a song in their own mind and put it in a physical form that you can hear and enjoy, and sing it themselves with a specific, unique connection to that song that no one else on the planet has. To me, that's special. So I was always very drawn to singer-songwriters. Billy Joel, Barry Manilow, Elton John. People that wrote their own music and sang, and in many cases even produced it. Because when you listen to that song, you know that it is them. It's not them and 15 other people. You know what I mean? It's them. They created it, the idea was born in their mind. And they gave it birth, and they executed it. And they played that and sang. And you know what I mean? So I've always been, Journey, love Journey. Toto, the band, I love the 80s. And I think maybe I do so much because that's where I kind of stumbled across the fact that I could play the piano and started writing songs. And the songs that I wanted to write were songs that were inspired by those kind of writers and singers and producers. So I think that's probably where I would fall as far as who my favorite artists are. I mean, I've spent enough time in a recording studio. I don't know if any of you have, but guys, when I started recording music, there were no computers. Like, there wasn't Pro Tools. There wasn't Audacity. There wasn't a computer program where you plug a mic in and you sing or you talk or you play, and there's the little transient wave, and you can cut it up and move it around, and you can stretch it, and you can copy it and paste it, pitch shift it, none of that. There were 2-inch wide reels of magnetic tape, and they had 24 little bands on them, and that's how you recorded multi-track sessions where the drums, kick drum would be on one track, and the bass guitar would be on another track, and piano would be on 2 tracks because it was stereo. Vocal would be on 1 track, and the hi-hat would be on 1 track, and the guitar would be on 1 track, and the sax player would be on 1 track, and then you would mix them all together. And there was no pitch correction. There was no, if you sang it here, you had to sing it. If you sang the first chorus, guess what? You had to sing the second chorus. You couldn't copy it and paste it over. And pitch correct it and double it and chorus it and flange it. I have such enormous respect. The Carpenters, I have such enormous respect for people back in that period where the music they created was whatever came out of their mouth or whatever came out of their instrument. And today's music, you have so much more control over being able to create something with very little background or, dare I say, talent. Hope that doesn't offend anybody. It's the truth. GarageBand. They've created loops for you that other people played, right? And you string them together. Well, you didn't play that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't even have to be able to play an instrument to create a song. So I'm very fond of the period, and I wish more people knew what it was like back then to have to create music and execute and perform music, because it's very, very different. And I think that's why there are certain artists today that are very, very respected because they still can do that. A lot of the artists can't. You know what I mean? They're multi-millionaires and they're very popular, but as far as, hey, sit down and play a song, well, they can't do that. Or stand up right here and sing something. And they would sound horrible because they don't have the benefit of all the tools and the technology that makes them sound really good. I've always had great admiration for people that could just sit at the piano and do it, or pick up a guitar and do it, or just sing a song, and it's beautiful.
Cool. How would you say that your singing music experience has helped you with getting into the voice acting industry?
A great deal. And you know what? I'm glad you asked that, because I've observed over the years that a lot of voice actors have a great deal of musical background as well. I don't think that's an accident. I think that as a singer, you become familiar with your voice. You come to learn what it will do and what it won't do, right? You come to learn your limits. You come to learn what tone you can make come out, or how you pronounce a certain vowel sound, or how you communicate emotionally when you sing, right? That's voice acting without the melody, basically, right? So I think that singing has a large connection and a large benefit, I should say, to voice acting. A lot of voice actors I know are singers and musicians of sort. And another element, not just singing, but being a musician and understanding rhythm and tempo. There's something, and I can't quite define it, but there's something musical about voice acting. And I don't mean sing-songy. I mean there's a certain rhythm and tempo to anime. And if you have an inner clock, an inner sense of rhythm, an inner innate, undefinable sense of tempo and rhythm, you just tend to naturally lock in to voice acting. I can't explain it, but I know it's true. And a lot of voice actors share that same background in music.
So a lot of things you do, dubbing anime, and now the Star Trek series, are based on previous established content. Do you ever have a problem where when you approach that content you feel external pressure from all the established fan base to really push the envelope and just do, like, just, I don't, maybe this is poorly worded, do your best, because obviously you want to do your best at everything, but in these particular situations you don't have this clean slate to work with. You have so many expectations that you have to kind of address.
Absolutely. Full Metal Alchemist was the first show that I ever was a part of that I literally got emails before we recorded the show. That never happened. I had probably recorded at least 40 or 50 anime series before I did Full Metal. And I never got one email ahead of time about being in this show. Never. Full Metal was the first series that before we ever recorded the show, as soon as the cast was announced, I had fans writing me saying, "Hi Vic, I just read that you got cast in Full Metal Alchemist. Don't screw it up." I'd never gotten anything like that in my life. I was like, oh my gosh. There is an intense fan base behind Full Metal Alchemist. And it was a bit daunting, right? Knowing that there was an expectation. Never had that before. Now, you talk about Star Trek. Well, you can multiply Full Metal by 50 when you start talking about Star Trek fan base. Millions, right? All around the world. Star Trek. I mean, arguably the most iconic television series in history. I've always wanted to play Captain Kirk. I grew up loving that character. As a little boy, he was like a role model, a father figure, because my dad wasn't around. So when I decided to make Star Trek Continues, I knew that there would be a ton of people that would judge very harshly, that would have preconceived expectations. And the idea of playing, if the idea of playing Edward Elric was daunting, the idea of playing Captain Kirk was multiplied times daunting. All I knew was I loved him, and I loved Star Trek, and that I would bring every ounce of my love and my skill and my talent to pay homage to this show that meant so much to me. And that was all I could do. That's all you can do, is give it everything you have, right? You can't give something more than you have. And that's what I did. And I thought, well, I'm gonna do the best I can, and then I'm gonna let the chips fall where they may. So I made the first episode and I put it out, and the response was overwhelming. People loved it so much. And people they could see how much love I was putting into this, and that it was coming from the place of a fellow fan who also had skill in filmmaking and acting and production and music and sound design, editing, lighting, makeup, props, costumes, on it goes. So there was certainly a preconceived expectation from the audience and fan base of both of those things. And I'd like to think that we've done well, and we have exceeded even a lot of people's expectations. You know, when Full Metal was made, at the point that Funimation got the license to Full Metal Alchemist, Funimation was known as the house that DBZ built. It was literally known as the studio that made Dragon Ball Z. And that was what scared people. They were afraid that Funimation was gonna turn this intense, wonderful story of Full Metal into Dragon Ball Z. They were terrified. Well, they didn't. They made something very special. Fans really enjoyed it, and those expectations, hopefully, to a large extent, were met. Yes, sir.
What was the casting process like for Star Trek Continues?
It's me.
Was it like a lengthy casting session?
Nope.
I mean, did it take?
No, I invited people that I knew and that I liked to be a part of this show. It was my dream project. It was my childhood dream project. So rather than put out a casting call for Mr. Spock, I sat down one day and thought, who do I know that would be a good Spock? Because, I'm old. I've been around a long time. I know a lot of actors. Todd, Asian, so he's got kind of an exotic look to him. He's a great actor. He's even a little taller than I am, just like Spock was to Kirk. I like him a lot. We're friends. And I mentioned it to him. He's like, I would love to do it. And I said, well, you make me an audition. And he did. My biggest concern was that he was a little young. Spock would typically be a little older than Kirk, a little more mature. And he's 20 years younger than I am. But I decided that he's a friend, he's a good actor, I like him a lot, so I cast him. Everybody in the show are people. Chuck Huber, like he'd be a good Dr. McCoy. Granny Mahara, he'd be a great Sulu. People that I knew, and I asked them to be a part of it, and even when it extended to guest stars. We need an Orion slave trader. Now, wouldn't it be cool if it was somebody who was big and menacing, intimidating? Orions are green. Oh my gosh, Lou Ferrigno. We're friends. We've done conventions together. I showed him some pictures of my sets, told him what I was doing. He said, sure, I'd love to. So the casting process has basically been me sitting down and going, who do I know that would fit this role? And I ask them, and either they say I can't do it, or I'm busy, or how much does it pay? And it doesn't, so I lose them if I say, well, really, it's not a paying thing. It's really a labor of love. But it's really awesome, and it's something people are going to be watching for decades to come. I believe that it will one day kind of be part of the canon of, you watch the original series, and then the original series was canceled, you watch Star Trek Continues. And it ends right where the motion picture begins. So the casting process has basically been that. Yes?
All right, please feel free to, no comment on this one. Since you're doing your own Star Trek series, how do you feel about the polarization of the Axanar fan
Axanar
series?
are criminals.
Okay.
Flat out criminals.
All right.
It's not mincing words, is it?
No.
When you take almost $2 million, you know where that money is now? It's gone. Where's the movie? Never been shot. That's called fraud. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. If you give me money because I promised to make something and I spend your money on myself and my personal things and don't do what I said I was going to do with your money, that's fraud. And the person behind that project deserves some pretty strong action in response for what he has done with the fans' money. And peripherally, what he's done to the rest of us who were making Star Trek fan productions out of love and passion. I mean, there have been dozens of Star Trek fan productions for years. CBS and I have never had a problem with any of them because there was an unspoken line in the sand. You don't profit from somebody else's property. As long as you're not trying to line your pockets with Star Trek money, they were fine. But as soon as somebody crossed that line and crossed it big, they had to step in and protect their property. I don't blame them for that at all. But it has been very damaging to the rest of us who were doing it for nothing but love and homage to Star Trek. So that's all I have to say about that.
Not a problem, thank you. Just wanted to see opinions on other creators and that whole issue. So, lighter note then?
Yeah.
Have you seen or have opinion on Renegades when that was being created?
I was in Renegades.
I thought so. What happened? It was being done and then I just media blackout.
Well, Renegades raised a lot of money to make another Renegades.
Mm-hmm.
And then they decided to try something very admirable. When the guidelines fan film guidelines came down, and again, they're guidelines. They're not rules. There's a difference between a rule and a guideline, right? When the guidelines came down, the producers of Renegades, as far as I know, from my understanding, and I know them well, decided rather than scrap the project, they would try to remove as much of the Star Trek reference as they could and make it its own new independent thing. It's pretty admirable. Rather than saying it's not supposition, it's fact. There were no guidelines. And when the lawsuit took place, the guy behind Axanar, who doesn't even deserve to be named, said, well, you can't sue us because there aren't any really guidelines. Nobody really knows where you draw the line with copyright. There aren't any guidelines. You've never given the fan productions any guidelines. And so CBS said, okay, you want guidelines? Here are your guidelines. That's where they came from. They came from Axanar trying to hide behind the fact that there weren't any set. You know what? There weren't any set guidelines because everybody that has any sense of ethics or morals knows that you just can't make money off somebody else's property. And nobody did. Everybody understood that. I didn't need you to write me, you know what I mean? Nobody needed a manifesto written it down of what you couldn't do. Everybody, and I can speak for other people in the Star Trek fan production world, because I know them. We all got it. This one bozo didn't seem to get it. We all understood that as long as you don't try to profit personally from somebody else's license, you're okay. If I owned Star Trek, I would be ecstatic that other people wanted to pay homage to it and celebrate it, right? Because that just keeps my property alive. Lucas got it. George Lucas got that. He had no problem letting people make Star Wars fan films because it kept Star Wars alive. And I think CBS got that too. Fans making Star Trek, celebrating Star Trek, kept their license alive. As long as you don't try to pocket money from their property. And that's when that line was crossed, that's when it all changed. So, Renegades, did the best that they could in the situation they were in to honor their promise to the fans and try to comply with the guidelines. But that's a perfect example of how the guidelines, how Axanar forcing the guidelines to be put in place affected other productions that were just trying to do something, for love of Star Trek. I personally, as opposed to making money and pocketing tens of thousands of dollars, and that's documented, by the way. That's not me making anything up. It's documented. As opposed to paying myself a salary to make Star Trek, I personally spent over $100,000 of my savings, my personal savings, to rent a building, to have sets built, to fly my actors down, to put them in hotel rooms, to buy them food every day, to rent equipment, because I believed in Star Trek, because I wanted to pay tribute to Star Trek. I didn't see it as a dollar. I didn't see dollar signs. I didn't see it as an opportunity, to promote myself and to profit a little bit. It was just I just wanted to pay homage to Star Trek. And when that line was crossed, the people who owned Star Trek had to act to defend their property. Please, somebody ask it. A lighter,
Okay.
better question.
Moving on
Yeah.
to Ruby.
Yay, good. That's a good segue.
I know it's been about 2 years since Monty Ohm passed away. How has development of that show changed since he left, and what is the future of Ruby as you see it?
I don't know what the future of Ruby is because I'm not involved in the writing or the strategy with Rooster Teeth, but I do know that I am extremely honored and grateful to be a part of it. I met a couple of those guys at a convention in Australia, and they showed me artwork from Ruby, and I thought it was really cool looking, but I didn't even know who they were. They're like, "Have you heard of our show Ruby?" And I'm like, "No." Tell me about it. And they told me all about it, and they showed me animation sketches and character designs, and I thought, wow, this looks really cool. Didn't think anything else about it. Went back home from Australia, and a few weeks after I got home, I got an email from one of them saying, "Hey, you want to play a role in that show that that we showed you character designs from? And I said, sure. And I didn't ask them how much money it paid because they didn't care. It was an opportunity to do something that seemed like fun. And so I've been very, very privileged to be a part of Ruby. I don't know where it's going, and I record all my lines in Los Angeles, alone. I'm not in the studio in Austin. I'm not sitting there with the Rooster Teeth producers. I'm certainly not sitting there with Aaron and Elizabeth and the other actresses. They send me the scripts and I find Crow's lines, and then I read a couple of lines beforehand so I know what in the world I'm responding to, what the setting is, what the situation is, and then I record them and give them a couple of variations on each line, and send them by email to Rooster Teeth. And I've been very, very surprised and honored by the response that people have really been enjoying it.
Just a quick note, we have about 3 more minutes, so any last questions? And then,
Do you have, like, if somebody asked you, dead to rights, top 5 characters you ever played, could you make a short list?
Edward Elric, Tamaki from Oran High School, Gall from Generator Gall. That was the first lead role I ever played. Long time ago, and it's a wonderful show. Maybe Yukito from Air. There's a show called Air that I really, really love. It's hard. Reem in Free was a really fun role. Broly from Dragon Ball Z, I mean, pretty cool. Zero, Vampire Knight. I know I've gone past the 5. But,
Keep going, it's fun.
But those are some that stick out that I really, really enjoyed. I find that I enjoy the ones that you enjoy. When you record a character, you're in a vocal booth, right? You're basically in a padded phone booth. And there's nobody else there. There are no other actors there to act with. There is no audience laughing or crying. Fi from Tsubasa was a character that I really enjoyed. There isn't any way to know how the performance will be received. So to come to conventions and interact with people and find out that they really loved this character, or that this role really meant something to them. That's how I tend to develop my affinity for roles that I play, is how they were received. If you were a theater actor and you played a character in a stage play and people hated the play, chances are it wouldn't be one of your favorite characters you ever played. You know what I mean? However, if you played a character on a stage play and people just loved it, then that would, you know what I mean, just naturally kind of become a character that you really love because you know that it meant a lot to others. So those are typically my favorites. Before we finish up, I want to say something else about the Axonar thing. When you guys do whatever reporting, video clips you do, I would like to ask you, be kind. I am not a person who is good at mincing words about what I feel about things. When I feel like somebody has horribly screwed people over, or I feel like somebody has horribly done something very unethical, I'm pretty straightforward about it. You could just blast out there everything I've said, and that guy behind Axonar will wage war because he's a loud, arrogant individual. And he will wage war and try to cause trouble for me personally and Star Trek Continues because he can't stand the fact that people call him out on his crap. You know what I mean? Like, who likes that? Nobody likes that. So if you decide to put out there everything that I just shared with you, certainly that's your right. And I chose to say the things I said, and I absolutely stand by them. Absolutely. But I would like to encourage you to consider to be kind and what's the word? Tactful in your editing. Because the more inflammatory stuff that gets out there, it just fuels some people's fire. Lord knows I don't need that. It doesn't change what I feel, doesn't make what I said any less true. But it'd be nice not to have to deal with somebody throwing outrageous stuff back at you just because they don't like the fact that you spoke the truth to a bunch of cameras. Any other questions? Anybody? Yeah.
Actually, just a quick question going back to some of the fan-created things you've been a part of.
Uh-huh.
Besides the Star Trek ones, more recently you were a part of Futurama.
Oh, did you see it? Did you see that?
Yeah. Did you?
I had so much fun.
Did that stem from your love of being?
No, actually, no. Let me tell you. The guys that made the Futurama thing are fans of Star Trek Continues. And they contacted me through one of our guest stars. I didn't even know who they were. They were friends with Claire Kramer, who was in Buffy. And Claire Kramer was one of our guest stars in episode 7. So they contacted Claire and said, we love Star Trek Continues. Will you put me in touch with Vic? So she did. And they said, we're making this Futurama thing. Would you at all be interested in playing Zap Brannigan? And I was like, that would be really fun. So I went over to their studio and they built this amazing studio. They rebuilt the set from the ship, and they had all these miniatures, and the costumes and the props were absolutely amazing. They did with Futurama what I did with Star Trek. So it was a real thrill to be able to play that and be a part of their thing. And celebrate Futurama the same way that I celebrate Star Trek. So yes, it was awesome. Very awesome. Thanks for even mentioning it.
I think we'll call it there.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you guys were here. And I hope you'll maybe get the chance to come to the panel today, Q&A session today, and we'll have a good time.
All right.
All right?
All right.